Can a therapist really see you without giving you a mental health diagnosis? Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. I saw this question. It came up on Threads where, due to all of the, sort of recent controversy, she posed a question. Can a therapist really see you and treat you without you giving you a mental health diagnosis? And the short answer is yes, they can. However, just because someone can do something doesn't mean that they should do something. And so I'm going to give you, um, my opinion based off of people doing that. I don't really think it's in a best practice for a therapist or a client to be seeing a treating mental health provider without a diagnosis. And regardless of whatever the reason is that you're seeing a therapist, and here's a number of reasons why, and this is regardless of even if you're seeing someone without using your insurance. Number one, a diagnosis, and I try to do it right from the very beginning with people, and I've never taken insurance in my practice, but even still with that, I do it right from the very first session. Diagnosis can and do change over time depending on what the needs are. And you could even have a diagnosis for relational issues, abuse within the relationship and things like that. But it helps you to get clear with your patient. It helps you to formulate a treatment plan. And I use it as a guiding principle to educate clients, let them know, here's what the symptoms look like and things like that. So you want to educate people and walk them through the process so that they can get a clear understanding of what this entails, what are the symptoms, and what is the treatment plan going to tackle, and how are you going to address my needs and help me to get better, and that should be laid out right from the very jump, every single client I do this with. And then number two is just because you don't accept insurance does not mean that you should not diagnose patients. And the reason why is sometimes, patients want to submit, their treatment for reimbursement as an out-of-network provider, meaning that you're not contracted with their insurance, but they want to try to recoup some of the money back. Their insurance can request at any time to do an audit of their record to see what's going on, why are they coming to see you, and why are we paying this person back. So it's always good to keep a good record. It's always good to have diagnoses and things like that, because if they need a super bill, they will need a diagnosis as well as a procedure code to submit for reimbursement. Number three, other things can come up that you don't see coming. And as good practice, your notes will always cover your ass every single time as a treating clinician. This is somebody, I worked at a very litigious environment. I worked in corrections for a number of years. Corrections is very litigious. You have inmates that want to sue all the time. And so your records are going to be, at any time a lawyer can be looking at that. Anytime your records can be subpoenaed, your supervisor, anybody, you want to kind of paint a picture as clear as possible of what's going on, why you did certain things, and what's happening, that certain allegations are being made against you. Your records are going to do that every single time. So your records can be audited, pulled by the licensing board. If someone makes a complaint, that's the first thing they're going to want to see. They're going to want to see records of that. If someone sues, or if they're in a lawsuit, right? Sometimes that could be, even things like custody agreements and things like that. At any time, people want and need their records for things like that. So one, to cover your own butt, it needs to be very clear what you're treating, why, and what are the steps, and how you address that in every treatment session. And there's been times when I've looked at records that aren't clear. Records that aren't clear, or either people just do a copy and paste for every single time that they've had an interaction with their client, meaning that they didn't write anything new. They just literally copy and pasted the records for every single interaction. So your records will definitely cover you. And, if you don't believe Dr. Jones, you don't have to. Always consult with your malpractice carrier. They can advise you. But let's say, for example, someone's coming to see you for depression and anxiety. What are their symptoms? What were your recommendations? What were the treatments? What were the things that you taught them in the session? Sometimes, what's really big is, have you tracked the symptoms over time? How did you come to the understanding that symptoms were improving, not improving? Were further interventions necessary? Those types of things. And let's just say that you're in an abusive relationship. What sort of counseling did I provide? Was the patient safe? What recommendations did I give for the patient to ensure their safety? What was done to resolve the crisis in a moment? It really should tell a story if you can. If someone ever files a complaint, files a lawsuit, they can look and say, okay, here's what it is, bada boom, bada bing, and go on, and that will cover you as long as you can get clear. Other things may come up, such as people may want to take a leave of absence from their job. People may want to go out on short-term disability, or may need to. And of course, if you're a treating provider, what are they going to need? They're going to need your records. You may, not all the time, but sometimes they may need the records. Maybe even you might need to collaborate with another treating provider. If they go to their medical doctor, and their medical doctor may want to contact you and things like that. And so it's always good practice to have that. If you're ever asked to fill out, their leave of absence or disability paperwork, your records need to correspond with that, because they're going to be asking how long you treated this, what does this patient need, what are the interventions that you're going to be using, is their work going to need to be modified when they come back to work? All of that sort of stuff is going to need to be filled out. And so your records should be reflecting that diagnostically and clinically, to kind of go along with that. And lastly, and this isn't necessarily comprehensive, but lastly, patients may also want to see their records, so that, patients can also request their records and see, if they don't know. But, all things should be very clear. You should always be billing as well, whether or not you take insurance in your practice or not. I always provide patients with a super bill, and here's the diagnosis code, here are the procedure codes for every single session, because they may decide at any time that they want to submit the records, or a statement for reimbursement. Sometimes insurance changes. Maybe they weren't before, but maybe they're able to do that now. And so it's good to kind of keep that sort of, it kind of helps keep your practice organized. It keeps things on the up and up. You may want to give like little assessments and screeners like that, which I do in my practice with the EHR. You can give anxiety, depression, the ACE, PHQ-9, and things like that. But if you're given those things, it helps to have a diagnosis that comes out of that. You're doing these things for a reason. And so, records should definitely tell a story when you open them up. So it helps to keep you clear, helps keep everything cut and dry. And I know there's going to be some people that maybe say, I've never diagnosed a client and I've never had any problems. Just because you've never had a problem doesn't mean that you won't going forward. All it takes is one person, one time, and psh, it could really blow up a spot if you're not prepared. But those are just my thoughts. You don't have to, listen to Dr. Jones. But anyway, hope this helps. Like, share, comment, and give me a follow. Thanks so much.